So the Supreme Court is now considering a case which deals with whether or not undocumented immigrants are protected under the US Second Amendment. So let's talk about this. But real quick before I jump into this video, if you think it's time for the Supreme Court to finally start addressing all these Second Amendment issues, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. Also, I want to let you know that this content is powered by the Firearms Policy Coalition. So head on over to joinfpc.org to help support the Second Amendment cause. Thank you again, Firearms Policy Coalition, for supporting this channel. So like I said in the intro, a case has been distributed to the Supreme Court for conference, and this case deals with the question of whether or not undocumented immigrants are considered to be part of the people who possess the inherent and pre-existing right of armed self-defense as codified in the Second Amendment. The case that the Supreme Court will be now considering is Perez v. United States. Now, for some quick background on this case and how it wound up in the Supreme Court. Javier Perez was born in Mexico and came to this country when he was a child. He then resided here continuously over the next decade and a half, working as a carpenter. He also had two children who are actually both born in the US and are US citizens. In July 2016, Mr. Perez was attending a barbecue with his friends in Brooklyn when he saw this gang of, teenagers attacking some young rival in a different gang, and they were attacking him with bats and machetes. And Mr. Perez was at this barbecue. One of his friends had a firearm. They handed this firearm to Mr. Perez. Mr. Perez shot this pistol in the air several times, scared away these assailants. The assailants ran away, and then when it was all over, Mr. Perez handed over that pistol back over to his friend. Of course, police showed up after this, and then Mr. Perez was charged under federal law of being in violation of 18 U.S. Code Section 922G5, which bars undocumented immigrants from possessing a firearm in any circumstance. Mr. Perez moved in his case to dismiss that indictment on the ground that it violated his Second Amendment rights. Despite this claim, the district court then denied his motion. He then pled guilty pursuant to an agreement preserving his right to appeal that court's denial. After he pled guilty, the court sentenced him to 20 months imprisonment and 3 years of supervised release. Now, in response to this, Mr. Perez filed an appeal up to the Second Circuit. The Second Circuit affirmed the lower court's ruling on July 29 of last year, 2021. The majority in the Second Circuit actually did assume, without actually deciding in that case, that undocumented immigrants are part of the people protected by the Second Amendment. However, despite that, they still concluded that Section 922G5 survived intermediate scrutiny and that Mr. Perez's conviction under that code was constitutional. So essentially, the Second Circuit said yes, undocumented immigrants are part of the people as mentioned in the Second Amendment, but despite that, the US code that bars immigrants from using firearms for any reason was still constitutional because it passed the watered down intermediate scrutiny test that a lot of these liberal courts like to use. And of course, in reaction to that Second Circuit decision, Mr. Perez is now seeking a writ of certiorari and has filed a petition up to the Supreme Court. The questions presented by him to the Supreme Court are first, whether an undocumented immigrant who has developed substantial ties to this country is part of the people who possess the inherent and pre-existing right of armed self-defense as codified in the Second Amendment. Second, he asked whether the Second Circuit's use of the interest balancing test in his case was incorrect. And then finally, he also says that if the Supreme Court does not want to address this case at this time, they should put it on hold until they issue their decision in the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association case. So let's take a look at some of the arguments he made in his petition to the Supreme Court of why the Supreme Court needs to review this case. First, he argues that the court should take up this case to answer a critical question concerning whether undocumented immigrants like him are among the people protected under the Second Amendment, a question on which circuit courts of appeals have been pretty much split on. A lot of these lower courts are split on this issue. The Second Circuit said, yes, they are part of the people, but not all lower courts like the Second Circuit have actually reached that conclusion. Now, arguing a circuit split is a good way to get the Supreme Court to actually address some of these issues, because often when there are lower court circuit splits, the Supreme Court will take up the case to try to resolve this issue. They don't always do that, but it is one good way to argue why the Supreme Court needs to review the case. In this section of his arguments, he argues that, as Heller outlined, the right codified in the Second Amendment does not have a tie to a political community or is not intended to be part of a civic duty, i.e., the right is not tied to someone's citizenry and is not tied to their ability to vote or take part in their civic duties. Instead, the right protected in the Second Amendment is a natural right that is inherent to all individuals and pre-existed even the founding of our country. On this basis, he argues the Supreme Court should find that he has, as an undocumented immigrant, the right to actually keep and bear arms in the US, and that he is part of the people mentioned in the Second Amendment, and therefore is also afforded the protections under the Second Amendment in the US. Second, he argues that the Supreme Court should grant review of his petition because the court below, the Second Circuit, like many other lower circuits, undermined Heller by treating the Second Amendment right as a second-class privilege that the legislator can override with pretty much little justification. This is a similar argument that we have seen in other types of petitions to the Supreme Court and other circuit court cases. Currently, various lower courts like the Second Circuit, the Ninth Circuit, use this watered-down interest balancing test when they review the Second Amendment issues. And here Mr. Perez is saying that the Second Circuit, in his case, has done something similar and that the Supreme Court needs to review this case. Courts that like to use this watered-down interest balancing test often are liberal-leaning, and they often defer to any governmental interest as a justification to restrict Second Amendment rights. Heller, however, identified that the true test when it comes to the Second Amendment, and when you are dealing with these Second Amendment cases, the true analysis is text as informed by history and tradition. Therefore, Mr. Perez is arguing that the Supreme Court should once again identify what the clear constitutional analysis is, which is text as informed by history and tradition, and force the Second Circuit to actually use that analysis. Finally, Mr. Perez argues that at the very least, the Supreme Court should put his case on hold until they rule in the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruen case. He believes that that decision could have a major impact on how the Second Circuit should rule in his case, and therefore the Supreme Court at the very least should hold his case until they rule in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association. Currently, the Supreme Court has held other cases like the ANJRPC magazine ban case and the Young v. Hawaii open carry case. Both of these cases could be impacted by the Supreme Court's decision in that New York State case, and Mr. Perez believes that his case could also be impacted by that decision. This is especially true since a big part of his petition and big part of his argument is that the Second Circuit is using the wrong type of analysis when they reviewed his case. During oral arguments in the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association case, Justice Gorsuch was actually very concerned about lower courts like the Second Circuit using the incorrect type of analysis. And even the New York State attorney who represented the state of New York conceded that the analysis for the Second Amendment cases like this should be text, history, and tradition, start to finish, not this balancing of interest test that the Second Circuit has used, the Ninth Circuit has used, and all these other lower courts that tend to be more liberal leaning. Now, this case has been distributed for conference on February 18th. That means the Supreme Court will get together on that date and decide whether or not they want to grant cert, deny cert, or maybe even just put this case on hold like Mr. Perez requested from the Supreme Court. So this is a really interesting case because it not only deals with the current type of analysis that lower courts should use when they review these issues, but it also deals with, in the US, what type of protections do undocumented immigrants have when it comes to the Second Amendment? Are they part of the people as envisioned in the Second Amendment, or are they not? Personally, I think the Supreme Court will not take up this case, especially since they haven't even addressed all the protection issues when it comes specifically to US citizens. It would be a very big jump to skip all of those protections that they have refused to address and then just start dealing with immigrant rights when it comes to the Second Amendment. I just don't see them just making that huge jump and just kind of jumping that gap altogether. I could be wrong. Maybe they think this is interesting enough to take up, but I guess we'll have to see what they do with this case when it comes to the conference. But this is definitely an interesting case, and let me know what you guys think down in the comment section. Also, if you like this video and like support the channel, one of the best ways to do that is to like, comment, and subscribe. All those things help to fuel the algorithm, or fuel Al Gore's rhythm. It adds fuel to his jet, and it signals to YouTube that you guys see value in these videos and in this type of two-way news. I cannot thank you guys enough for everybody who's liked, commented, subscribed, just hit the notification bell. You guys are directly impacting this channel, impacting these videos, helping me to educate more people than I could have ever thought on Second Amendment issues and cases like this. And all of that is because of you guys. I cannot thank you enough. Thank you for all of your support. And if you don't have a comment in mind, just comment down below that you're coming to fuel the algorithm, and that really does help these videos. So as always, thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and never forget this nation was built by armed scholars. This nation will be maintained by armed scholars.